Good morning and welcome to the show. It's Monday, so you know what that means. I'm here with Dr. Roman Nation from Nation's Best Family Healthcare in Lynn Haven, and now Panama City Beach as well. Welcome to the show, Doc.
Good morning, sir.
Good to see you again.
Yes.
Now, I have questions. I have lots of questions for you today about vitamins.
Yeah.
How important are they? Well, I know they're important. That's kind of a Bush League question. But should we be taking multivitamins? I mean,
depends on the person.
How about kids? Is that Flintstones vitamin really doing anything for us?
You know, on the kid level, it's much harder to determine the usefulness of a lot of things because their body's ability to absorb stuff is extremely better than as we get older. Mm-hmm. And the majority of our patient population, where the whole thing is older, we get into an area where as we age, your body can't absorb the nutrients like it used to. Mm-hmm. So we've got lots of folks that we've switched over to adding vitamin therapy to doing their other stuff, and they start to feel better, and their numbers get better. Their thyroid function gets better, and their cholesterol support gets better, their glucose gets better, lots of interesting things that happen.
I think we all remember from high school, if you have a vitamin deficiency,
right,
you can get these crazy diseases like beriberi and rickets.
Yeah, beriberi,
like
rickets, and those kinds of things. You know, and those are the things.
And that's in the extreme, though, isn't it?
That is correct. There's a spectrum of vitamin levels in your system, and there's 4 fat soluble vitamins: A, D, E, and K, and then there's a whole string of other vitamins that are what we call water soluble vitamins. And there's lots of other science that you can get into that's convoluted with why this is a vitamin versus what's really closer to a hormone. But the bottom line is that as we age, our body's ability to convert things from raw materials over into vitamins gets harder and harder.
Is it more important just to have a healthy diet that includes a lot of vitamin-rich foods, or supplements like taking that multivitamin?
Yeah, and that's the thing
effective?
is it's both because and we take both approaches, and we do lab work to correlate with that. The 2 most common vitamins that we look at in patients is vitamin D and B12. B12 most commonly is the single biggest thing that we check for people who are leading high stress lives. They've got too many things to do. Their system gets burned out, and so you get kind of worn out, you're tired, you get you can't sleep at night. It's like, oh, I'm exhausted, but I can't go to sleep, so you sit there and kind of stare at the ceiling for a couple of hours. Those tend to be overload vitamin. Overload
Get out of my head, Dr. Nation.
Well, see, that's the thing is I was just thinking about that because we see it all the time. I mean, and it's so ubiquitous with everyone that it's really hard to not think that some of these symptoms are your own. And the trouble that we often get into is when we talk about vitamin therapies, we have folks that go out and they buy vitamins like Centrum Silver or One A Day and those kinds of things.
And they got like Men's Health kind of, for men only and for the ladies and all that stuff.
Correct. And the biggest trouble you get into is the way that those companies make those vitamins is, yes, they have the right ingredients in them, but they cement them in things that your body can absorb either. So you're really not doing a whole lot of good. So the ones that we use and recommend for patients are what we call pharmaceutical grade vitamins. So it's made with the same kind of binding agents that you have in medications, so that when it gets inside your system, it has to break down so it can be absorbed. If you put, I can put a vitamin, and if I cement it, coat it in cement, guess what? It goes in, ain't gonna do a whole lot.
It doesn't really do a lot. It may break down a little bit, but not be absorbed the way it should be. So we have to run off to the local weather, but I do want to explore this whole B12 thing with you on the other side of this break, and D as well, for perfectly selfish reasons. And we'll be right back after your Waking Up with Don weather. Welcome back to the show. I'm here with Dr. Roman Nation from Nation's Best Family Healthcare, and we're talking about vitamins in your health. We talked a little bit in the previous segment about B12.
Yes.
How important is that to you? Because you hear anecdotally people getting these, I think, vitamin B or B12 shots, to give them energy. I mean, is that
there's a lot
legitimate?
And what we were talking about in the break is that typically if you're B12 deficient, then you're likely deficient in the other B vitamins as well. B12 is just the most common one because it was one of the first ones discovered that was contributing to anemia. So people who drink a lot of alcohol actually end up chewing up a lot of their B12 support. and then when they lead high stress lives on top of that, I mean, you can kind of see the cycle. It's like, I have a really hard job, I don't get any, don't get any rest at night, I'm not exercising, so I can't sleep very well, so what do? I knock back a couple of drinks to lay myself out, and it all snowballs on top of each other.
Geez.
So the other huge thing that we see is folks who've had bariatric surgery.
What exactly is that?
Like gastric bypass surgery, stuff like that for weight loss. And we see a ton of it. It is a great procedure for folks who cannot lose weight any other way. What a lot of things that they don't realize is what they're buying in on the other end, because when they shorten the gut or they slim it down, now all of a sudden you're developing a nutritional deficiency on the other side.
Yeah, I can see how that could happen.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not absorbing
so
the way you should.
You trade one problem for the other one, and it's usually about 3 or 4 years afterwards that we start picking up patients that are all of a sudden back to being tired and they're gaining weight little bits at a time. It's not for lack of dietary efforts, it's because their body can't absorb the nutrients that's there. So we have to get it in some other way.
So back to my original question, should I be taking a multivitamin, or I should be taking specific vitamins based on labs?
A couple of things. Well, it depends from one person to the other one. Now, the majority of people, when you look at big studies, all the big studies show that multivitamins don't do anybody any good. Okay, now, but like I said, on an individual basis, and this is how we approach it with most folks, is try a multivitamin and make it a good one. There's a couple places in town that do good high quality vitamins, and then we have some in our clinic too. Try them for a month. If you start feeling better, then great, then you continue it. If you try them for a month and you're not feeling any different, then we can recheck your labs, and if they're still low, then we switch to a different form of getting in your system, whether it's an injectable form versus something else. Sometimes you can get sublingual tablets that you can absorb them that way and things like that. There's a couple of clinics that I've seen that do IV vitamin therapy. That actually
is that more effective than?
Yeah, it's very controversial, and so, like I said, I would reserve those to people who can't get it in their system any other way. Obviously, diet is the best way to do it. With green, dark, leafy vegetables, those kinds of things. And then
fruits, vegetables. Just have a healthy diet, and you can
foods.
Forego vitamins, couldn't you?
Ideally,
for the most part. I mean, if you're a healthy individual.
Yeah. And then therein kind of lies the question. For a healthy individual, yes, that's true. As we get older, things tend to break down and lots of stuff. So it becomes harder and harder to try and make it up just with your diet. So
that's such interesting stuff. So so the B12 and all those other things that we hear about. Yeah. You really should talk to your doc about it and try not to self-medicate.
Find a doc that's willing to listen to you and look at it from an objective point of view. Like I said, you can find all kinds of stuff, both positive and negative, on the internet. As I said, the studies that have been done say it doesn't do any good. I can tell you on hundreds and hundreds of cases from an individual basis, it does a lot of good. And the same thing with vitamin D. Vitamin D is controversial in the news because it's had some studies that show it helps lower your risk for cardiac disease. We've had the same kind of thing for testosterone, that it can lower your risk, but then you go too much and then it becomes a problem. All of those things can be an issue. Too little is a problem. Too much is also can be a problem. With vitamins, it's really hard to get to the too much side of things.
Well, suffice it to say, body chemistry is very important to your health.
Yes,
and when in doubt, go see Dr. Roman Nation at Nation's Best Family Healthcare.
Yes,
Thank you so much, sir, for coming on the show and getting us smart on vitamins. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. I'm here with Dr. Aaron Shores from Spine and Neural Pain Specialists here in Panama City and up in Chipley. And today we're going to talk about some of the structures that you might find interesting in the spine. I mean, this is a very complex work of art here, isn't it?
It sure is. There's a lot going on.
There is a lot going on, and this is a real educational moment for me. I know last time out we talked a little bit about sciatica, and maybe we can investigate that whole area.
Sure. Yeah, a common theme that I have patients who come see me for the first time when their back hurts or their leg hurts is a lot of folks term that as sciatica. And I find a lot of times when people actually come see us, what he or she has is not sciatica, it's some other structure. So one common structure that I see in the office a lot that can be a significant source of pain is something called the sacroiliac joint, which is this joint here in the low back.
The sacroiliac.
Sacroiliac.
Sacroiliac. You know, we used to say as kids, oh, my aching sacroiliac. And we would say it all wrong, but sacroiliac.
Sacroiliac, or SI joint.
Okay, let's get a good look at that joint. Maybe you can show us where that is.
Sure. So that joint runs right here on both sides. There's one on each side of the back. And it's basically where your tailbone right here, which is called the sacrum, meets your hip bone right here, which is called the ilium. And that joint, the sacroiliac joint right here, there's again one on both sides, can become a significant source of pain for people and cause pain to radiate across the back, sometimes to the hip or the groin, and down the leg to about the knee. And this joint tends to be worse sometimes classically with sitting or going from a sitting to a standing position. And is sometimes challenging to diagnose because an MRI or an X-ray will not always tell you if this joint is a significant source of pain.
Dr. Shorts, I can see, you know, there are these little cartilage pads going in between your vertebrae. Is there anything similar to that in here? I mean, what keeps these bones from rubbing together? Is there a buffer in there of some sort?
There are ligaments that are not shown on this model, but there are ligaments that go over that joint to help hold it in place. And then there are also muscles of the hip that attach around there too that help stabilize it. But it is a joint that we commonly treat. It sometimes can become misaligned. So therapists, osteopathic physicians, chiropractors will sometimes try to align that joint. But sometimes, despite trying to align it and get it back in place, it just still hurts.
And I can see if you had an injury to that area, how problematic that could be. Because it is I mean, I'm looking at this, it's like a fine piece of machinery, and the tolerances seem very, very close.
They are. Yeah, and that's the challenge with it sometimes. You know, certainly, you know, there are some conservative things that can be done, but sometimes the only way to make the diagnosis is by doing an injection. And sometimes that same injection can also be a treatment for the problem.
Now, if we were to turn this way, perhaps, and we got to look at that joint from, say, this angle, right here. This is the joint we're talking about. You can see actually how very close that all is. When you do an injection, are you going right into that joint or in the area, or how do you get to it?
We go directly into the joint, and the way that we do that is we put a patient on their belly, clean their back off, and then using an X-ray machine to steer the needle, we slide a little needle into that joint. So there's a little bit of a funny angle and curve to that joint, which requires some sort of imaging device, usually some sort of what we call a fluoroscope or X-ray machine. Sometimes you can do it with a CT scan or ultrasound, but some sort of guidance to make sure that you get into the joint is important to make sure you get the maximum effect.
Well, it just seems like it's got to be a very precise procedure for it to be effective.
Absolutely.
And this is where experience and skill and education like yours comes in handy.
I hope so.
Me too. I would let you do that to me. That's fine if I needed it. I trust you on that, but. Boy, oh boy, it's better off just keeping a healthy sacroiliac.
Correct.
Dr. Aaron Shores, thank you so much for getting us smart on a sacroiliac and the structures of the lower spine.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back. I feel smarter already, right after these messages. Welcome back to the show. I'm here with Christina Williams from Superior Residences here on Panama City Beach. And Superior Residences, if people who don't know, is a assisted living facility, brand new.
Brand new.
On Panama City Beach.
Correct. Brand new resort-style senior living community that offers assisted living and memory care. We're brand new. We will start moving residents in around April the 1st.
Now, people have already purchased or signed up
reserved.
for, or reserved, that's the proper word, you know, to live in some of those apartments that you have there.
Yes, sir.
So there's still some available.
There is, yes, sir. We are booking up quickly. People are very excited about our community. We have over 50% already pre-reserved, but we are still have plenty of room and are excited to welcome anyone who might be interested in our community.
Now, what if you're an elderly person who may be watching this right now, and you're like, well, do I really need an assisted living? I mean, how do you make up your mind?
Well, there's a lot of things to consider. You know, we talk about the pros and cons of moving in with us or staying at home, and if anyone's interested, they can go to our website, superioralf.com. And one thing that's really important is the cost. Everybody always asks, how much is this going to cost me?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Absolutely, money's important. And you work hard for your money and you don't want it to be wasted. But we have a cost comparison calculator where someone can go in and put in their monthly expenses, phone, cable, internet, homeowners insurance, yard man fees, pool fees, any fees that they have associated with their home that they pay on a monthly basis versus the rent for us and see where they would end up and what might be more cost effective.
And you know, the older you get, the more expensive things kind of become, because you know, I have elderly parents, and my dad used to be able to do everything around the house. Well, now he's getting up there in age and he can't.
Right.
You know, he can't shovel snow because they live in New York. I mean, he can't do a lot of those things he used to kind of take for granted.
Absolutely. And with us, it's, you know, one of the things we say, it's all the comforts of home without any of the hassle. We do your laundry, we clean your room, we keep up the yard. There's no yard to keep up. It's just, we change the light bulbs, we change the air filters, any of the maintenance things that the residents need, we take care of.
And then they give you whatever medical care you need as well. If
Yes,
you
sir.
need some sort of visiting nurse or whatever, you've got a whole medical staff right there to take care of you.
Absolutely. And what's so great about us, with our licensing level, we can give someone as little support or as much support as they need. They can move in with us very having great health, just might need some assistance occasionally, and then if they decline or a disease process takes place, they can stay with us and age in place, because we have an extended license level that lets them
just
stay
because
with
you
us.
get sick doesn't mean you have to move.
Correct.
I mean, you can
and you stay
there.
in your own apartment. I've had several people come in that think they move to a different part of the building as they get sicker, and that's not the case. You move into your apartment, and that is your apartment until you don't want it anymore.
You know, on the tour that I took there, what impressed me the most is that it's not just an old man or an old lady, and I say that with great respect. Couples are moving in there as well, where one's maybe in relatively good health and one needs more care, but one can't take care of the other anymore because of the age.
Absolutely. We have quite a few couples moving in, and like you said, it's typically one spouse needs a little bit more assistance than the other, and they just don't want to be by themselves anymore. And they can do that because our community is such a resort style, and it feels like home, that the spouse who is still in pretty good health doesn't feel like they're moving into an assisted living or institution.
Besides just going to your website and doing that whole checklist, I think there was some intangibles, like, you know, having friends, having a community of people, rather than just being in your home. And you know, we're so out of time, it's not funny, but it's always good to talk with you about this, because as we get older, you know, we're going to be looking out for our parents and grandparents here.
Absolutely.
Christina Williams, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. I'm here with Randy Akins from 5L Fitness out at Tyndall Air Force Base Gym, and also at Impact Fitness in Callaway. Randy, welcome back.
Well, it's good to be back.
I know we've been yucking it up before the show.
Yeah, we had a good time.
And I'm talking about my folks. You know, my mom just passed, and you know, my dad is elderly, and I was thinking, is there a point in your life where you're too old to really exercise?
No.
Or should you kind of save yourself?
And the thing about fitness for seniors is there are some special rules that we have to kind of pay attention to. I mean, they're not going to be as mobile as someone who's younger.
Sure.
And certain body parts don't work the same way, and their bone structure is a little more compromised than yours or mine would be. So we have to take that into consideration. But the thing about, you know, being elderly and working out is it really prolongs your life.
Yeah.
And, you know, increased blood flow and keeping your heart strong and all those things are good for you at any point in your life, regardless of what your age is.
You know, I've even heard a saying that says, even if it doesn't add years to your life, it adds life to your years.
Right.
So you may be a little more vital, a little more vigorous.
Yeah. And it's all about the quality of life that you are providing for yourself.
Yeah. You know, my wife used to go to a gym and slash therapy center.
Got it.
And there were a lot of older people there. She'd go there and she'd see these, you know, grandmothers, you know, on treadmills and things like that, you know. So it's never too late, I suppose.
No, not at all.
Just to move. You got to move.
Yeah, and when you don't, then that's when things stop working. So if you stop using it, then you won't be able to at some point.
Yeah. Well, you know, I guess if you're elderly or a senior citizen, you're not going to be benching 300 pounds. I mean...
Now, you'd be surprised. There are some literal freaks of nature out there in their 70s and 80s that are still that strong and still that active.
Wow.
But that's not the norm, of course. So, you know, especially if there's, you know, issues like osteoporosis or anything like that, I mean, that bone structure is not going to be able to handle that on a typical elderly person.
And your joints, too. You know, a lifetime of wear and tear on your joints.
It takes a toll, yeah. And some people just have really good joints, you know, for their age, regardless. And those people are the ones who can still do those things. But for the most part, the average American person is going to have compromised joint mobility and compromised bone structure at that age.
Especially if you were very athletic as a youth.
Yes.
You know, I know a fella who's in his 60s. He played football in high school and college,
and now he's got 2 new hips.
I see.
But he's still very active and very
and that's
strong.
good. Yeah, and especially when you have replacements and stuff like that too for that population. If you get a replacement and be stagnant, then you're never going to move again. Yeah.
So I guess your typical client is probably in their prime, but you would get some, if an older person came to you looking for a fitness regimen, you could help them out.
Definitely, and you'd be surprised. There's really no typical client.
Oh, really?
Sometimes you'll get the grandmas, or sometimes you'll get the younger people who need the help too. So the typical client's range is greater than most people realize.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I would think it would be somebody who's got something to work with. You're young and you're strong and you want to get stronger.
Right.
And that's kind of the idea of a lot of people have, and a lot of people are intimidated to walk into a gym.
They definitely are.
They're like, oh, I don't want to go in there with all those muscle heads.
Right.
But
right.
You could be an elderly little old lady and
still go in and
still go in and
yes, sir,
and stay in shape, and you can help them with that.
Definitely.
And how do we get in touch with you, Randy?
So you can reach me at 5lfitness.com, or you can find us at Impact Fitness or at Tyndall Air Force Base.
Okay, 5lfitness.com. Randy Akins, look for him at the gym on base, at Tyndall Air Force Base, and at Impact Fitness in Callaway. And we'll see you next time.